Hi, friends. My name is Katie Jordan. I am joined today with Dave DeBor, and we are here to chat about empowering CRM users, our Slate tips and tricks for admissions counselors. We are presenting this session at PACAC in June 2025, but we wanted to take you behind the scenes on our dress rehearsal today. So really excited to have this as part of the Parish Group resources. So I will go ahead and let Dave take us away.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Katie. So, Katie and I are both two former admission counselors. We've been road warriors. We've been in your shoes before. We've kind of done a little bit of everything. And between the two of us, we probably have done everything that you can in an admissions office. And then we eventually made our way to full-time Slate work. So now our roles have been focused predominantly on making Slate easy to understand for a lot of different audiences and a lot of different types of users. But our goal today is to teach you the things that you can do for yourself at the more entry level of an admissions hierarchy, without always needing to ask for help in building or modifying. And next slide, please, Katie. So my name's Dave DeBor. By way of introductions, I started working in Slate in 2018. I've worked in two Slate instances, but I also have other systems experience. I worked in one Salesforce instance. When I was at Carnegie Mellon University, I started working with Slate as my first instance, and then I was at GW where I worked a little bit on the graduate side, working within Salesforce. But I'm currently one of the admissions CRM managers for UC Santa Barbara. Although I live in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, so I don't get to enjoy the close proximity to the beach that all of my colleagues do as well. And I've been with UCSB for almost 3 years now, where I oversee predominantly the prospective student and inquiry management and communications side and event side of the house. And then I have a colleague who I partner with, but he predominantly oversees our application processing side of the house and things like decisions and whatnot. But I will turn it to Katie for her introduction. Actually, before you introduce me, I'm going to go ahead and just give a little bit of background for UCSB. We process about 120,000 undergraduate applications each year between freshman and transfer. We have three full-time Slate captains, plus a bunch of support from our IT developers who help us make sure that Slate and our campus systems are playing nicely. We're a public university. We are one of the top-ranked public universities in the nation, and we're very proud of that fact. And we have about a little over 24,000 students, 22,000 of those being undergraduate. But perhaps most importantly, we are located on the sunny beaches of Santa Barbara, California. And it's definitely a point of distinction that our students enjoy as a part of their experience. Now I will pass it to...
Were you making fun of that or? Hello, I'm Katie. I've been working in Slate for 10.5 years, which is terrifying. My background is 3 small liberal arts institutions, moved to consulting in 2021, and you can find me as the Senior Director of Slate Strategies with the Parish Group. And as Dave said, if it's in Slate at this point, I've probably touched it, which is a very exciting sentence. Very, very briefly about the Parish Group. We've been in business for 38 years. We are a Slate Gold Preferred Partner, and we do offer fully integrated search in your Slate instance. But in terms of what we are doing today, I'm going to chat some about how to effectively reach out to your students. Dave will be taking it away to define terms used in a query, talk about healthy queries, and something that I need to add to this slide before we present is then I will be going back and chatting some about dashboards. Okay, now we have a fairly extensive room poll, Dave. So I'm going to kind of brush through this for the online section. But our session, let's acknowledge, is like 8 a.m. So we thought let's do a little pulse check. So, ba-do-ba-do-ba-do, how many years do you have in Slate? And then thinking about what are you doing as part of your job in Slate. So if it's event, if it's deliver, if it's queries. Oh, I think that'll go a little slower in person for timing. But for now, let's chat about effective outreach in your Slate instance. Um, so we're going to start today with snippets. Let me just preface this with I'm a huge fan of snippets. The first school that I worked for was a Google school, so I like pre-wrote and saved messages for myself. This is the same idea. If you use the same content over and over, if you are doing it as an individual email, if you're doing it as an individual SMS message, save it. Keep it on hand for yourself. So where we are starting our work today is in the inbox module under the drop-down snippets. So when you click onto the screen, you'll see the two options of new snippet as well as edit signature here. So I pretended to be Dave for part of these builds. So I wrote a very brief congratulations on getting admitted to UCSB. Just like a general, congratulations, really enjoyed working with you. Woohoo! Always be in touch with me. So the important things here are the name, the method, and allowing sharing. So we're going to chat through what the sharing permissions look like. I'm also a huge advocate of foldering, but the name is something that will come up a little bit later on. I am also taking the step of pulling in a merge field here. So I simply clicked into export and grabbed preferred. This is going to make our customization happen a lot more naturally, and because we are relying on the Slate merge fields, the odds of me as a human making a typo or copying and pasting too quickly, those odds really decrease by grabbing it as a quick export on the snippet itself. So this is right now what it would look like if I am on my record and I click on my email address to send myself an email, which is a really silly example, and I acknowledge that probably not going to happen, but for the sake of the display, I am both the sender and the recipient, and right now it starts as a blank message with no snippets available on the right-hand side. And then we have a very dramatic before and after. So this is with adding my signature in at the snippet level. It is always then there for me without me needing to type it. And this also shows the admit congrats on the side here. And once I click on it, it inserts into the message itself. And something to note here is it does automatically say, hey, Katie test, as opposed to the person preferred. So really important things. Snippets are editable after they have been used, which is to say, going back, that you are not locked into this language. You are able to make any updates, any changes. You can add more context, whatever you would like to do. It just gives you a little bit of a jumping off point. You can decide if you want to keep them exclusive just for you, if it's something that you have really written in your voice. But as we talked about with the little sharing box, you can also opt to share it with different users. Something I also mentioned was you can use the names of the snippets. So again, on the slide before, we can see that the name was admit first congrats. You are able to search through your snippet names in case you have more than one of them, just to give yourself a really nice, easy way to find things at your fingertips. And then just to reiterate, the merge fields are a great way to make a message look very, very personalized while you are initially creating the content. I do also want to highlight Slate has an AI feature called First Draft, and this is available when you are writing messages. So if you wanted to enhance your message language, it is clicking on the three sparkly dots. Dave, do you know a better name for those?
That is my favorite one. That did not have a name before this.
Okay, perfect. Let's stick with it. Click on the sparkles to bring up first draft when you're looking at writing one of these messages. And it actually gives you ideas for prompts, but you can type in anything. Something of note is you can also specify the tone of the message if you want it to be like formal congratulations note from the president, or if you want it to be like casual congratulations note from the admissions counselor. It is really receptive to that kind of prompt. And so this is what it looks like when I click on like go ahead and insert. So clearly there's stuff to be cleaned up here, like do not include the subject line in the message body itself. That feels like a pretty strong indication that something was generated by AI, but just so it gives you the idea, you can generate this kind of message very, very quickly using Slate AI. So these things are great if you are developing the message to a student. But let's talk about what happens if the student reaches out to you first, because we're going to want to talk about how to BCC Slate on your messages, particularly if you're at an Outlook or a Google School. And the goal here is to get messages to show on a student's timeline without you needing to copy and paste the email as an interaction. So we are going to return to the inbox module, and this time we are going to click under Gateway on the right-hand side, and then we are going to click on Connection Instructions at the bottom, and this little pop-up will appear for everybody. So what we can see at the bottom here is the PGR plus the long string of letters and numbers. That is actually my user GUID in this instance. Fun fact. So what that means is that is completely unique to me as a user. And so if you were to, for whatever reason, take this email address and BCC it, it would look really, really funky. So all of that is to say, grab your own connection instructions and make sure that you are not sharing them with other people in your office, because you want to be really clear that this message is coming from you. I know I've said BCC a few times. I want to say it at least twice more. So making sure that when you are sending a message to the student that you are placing this in the blind carbon copy line, you are not putting it in the to or the carbon copy, but you are blindly carbon copying it in order to keep this private. I guess I said all of that. Good to know. And then also I do recommend adding it to your email directory for an easy blind carbon copy, which I've now said 3 extra times. Haha. Now, so these have all been communications to individuals, but let's chat about a larger group of students for a second, because that's going to take us to deliver. And let's just say that, like, you've built this query. Okay, you love this query. You're very proud of this query. You want to message everyone in this query. You have a lot of options, but I do want to talk about how to copy a query directly into deliver. So this is just functionality that I am not so secretly obsessed with, is making the import query button show up within deliver. Any query that you copy into the folder named deliver and then a subfolder named templates, and you click the little share button, that will magically show up under import query.
Well, thank you, Katie. Speaking of queries, it's really important that, as you get comfortable in Slate, that you start to understand how everything in Slate is really, really interconnected with each other. And that will eventually lead you to a lot of questions where you're wanting to pull, you'll want to know how many of X do we have? How are we doing with Y? And so forth. Thank you. And so I want to try to break it down because queries really are one of those fundamental building blocks. If you can start with a really simple query, you can eventually scale up and start to build harder and harder queries and become really, really powerful in your office and be able to make a lot of your colleagues' lives a lot easier. So when you're building a query, there are several key terms to keep in mind here. And I'm going to go through with some screenshots so you can see visually in Slate what we're talking about. But starting with a query base.
Is the
Next slide is
okay? Sorry.
so With when you're first starting with a query, and you click that quick query button or you click that new query button, you need to start by thinking about what type of records am I trying to pull. I like to think of that as what sort of what kind of a list do I want to end up with? Because a lot of users are familiar with that concept. A list of students, a list of high schools. Your base is kind of that starting point. And so you have a couple options you can choose to search records. Those could be students, those could be organizations. It could be custom records your institution's made. It could also be applications. You could also change that category to related and query on records that are connected to other records within Slate, or you could change it to system and query it on the more technical aspects or um, within the system. If you're doing some sort of administrative or Slate admin audit work. The next definition will be filters. And so once you've selected your base, you're going to have a lot of as much data at your fingertips as is in that one base. And so you typically aren't going to want to retrieve every single record in that base you selected. Maybe you do. Those are usually edge cases, but you typically want to narrow those results down a little bit. And so that's where clicking on that filter button comes in. And that'll let you leverage any of the pre-built fields that Slate comes with out of the box, and every custom field for that base that your institution has created. So in here, you can see if I wanted to narrow it down by person records created today, I could add that created date filter, type in today's date or type in the word today, and it would only give me those records in there that were created that day. So once you narrow down your base from every record to just the records you want, you probably want to actually have certain data points at your fingertips that you're pulling out of Slate or that you're going to manipulate within Slate. And that's called an export. Exports may be identical to your filters, but not every export is going to be visible within that filter list without a little bit of extra work, depending on the way the field was set up. So let's say you want a list of students and their names and their mobile phone numbers so that you can give them a congratulatory admitted student call. You may add the exports for their preferred first name, and so you click preferred. You may want their email as a backup in case they don't pick up. You might want to export their mobile phone and get their highest priority mobile phone number. And that would give you that list, assuming you filtered on just those records that are admitted students. And then you would have a nice list that would look fairly similar to what you've seen in Excel. But what happens if you've added your filters, you've selected the right records you want, you've added the exports you're going to need, but you need some information that you're not finding in that base that you selected? Well, that's where you have to introduce a join. And in Slate, all of these bases are interconnected with one another. And so by adding in a join to another base, you can start with the records in that base query that you created, and then you can get at any other data that might be stored on another record that's connected to that base. So if I know I want to call those admitted students in that list, but I only want those students in the state of California, I might add a base level join to address by rank overall and pull in their highest priority address. And then I would then unlock additional filters where I could add a filter for US state, and I could select California. Unless I added that initial join, I'm not going to be able to unlock the other data on that about that student because I haven't told Slate where to go to find that. So a base level join is one of the simplest joins that you can add, and it's typically used when there's what's known as a one-to-one relationship. So I'm Dave DeBor, a person record in Slate. I'm one person, and I only have one highest priority address. The other type of join would be a one-to-many. And that's where you need to introduce a subquery filter. And a subquery filter allows you to say, okay, Dave DeBor, one person record, could have attended multiple schools. And I don't care which school. I just care that one of those schools is connected to a high school in Massachusetts. Maybe I'm looking for a student that attends a school out of their home state. So in that case, I wouldn't want to use a base level join there without slowing down my query. So I would click that little subquery 3-dot icon next to filter. I've yet to come up with the best descriptor for that.
I use the pink one to blue many. It's a one to many.
Perfect. And then in here, I would click join, and I could add schools and contain my join within the subquery filter. What I'm doing here is essentially building a mini query nested within my main query. And then I could use the same functionality to add a filter, add an additional join from schools to the organization record, and a third one to address by rank overall. And I could filter on that on any school that's located in Massachusetts. But what if I don't need to filter on information stored on another record? Or what if I want to export it? So a subquery export will come in handy. It works the exact same way. I could either add a base level join if I really needed to get complicated, or I would just add a subquery export by clicking the one-to-many icon, add the joins that I need, but add the export that I need as well. And I would export, in the case of that example, the maybe the name of the organization. So I could see the name of the high school that the student attended as well. The concept of a one-to-one and one-to-many relationship can be a little tricky to wrap your head around, but it's a very important one to grasp. So we have a great visual to show you that will help you out. Thanks, Katie. So it's helpful to think when you are starting with a query and you're not sure if you want to use a base level join or a subquery join within a subquery filter, think about the person, the record you're starting with. So in this case, person, and think about the other record that you have that you want to get data on. And think about the relationship. Does that person have just one highest priority address? You could only have one number one address. Or does that person have multiple schools that they've attended or multiple jobs that they've worked here? If it's the former, so they only have one of the other type of record you want, a base level join will serve your needs. But if they could have multiple records of the same type, a subquery join is going to be your best friend here. But I want to also share with you some tips on how to build queries in the best way. So before you just start building, I find that it's helpful to start with a clear question. How many PA apps do we have is an okay starting point, but it doesn't necessarily answer a lot of outstanding questions or follow-up questions that someone might pose. But so something like how many undergraduate applications did we have from Pennsylvania in 2024 by county is a little bit more focused and allows you to make sure that you're really able to understand the need and the request, and build a better query in the end. And it'll save you a little bit of a back and um, and so I have a few more examples to go through in terms of kind of what queries look like as we're building. So as I went through those filters, you can see some real live examples. So you can see in this case, we're starting with a person base or an application base, but we wanted to know how many undergraduate applications in 2024 we had from Pennsylvania. So I couldn't just start with applications. I needed to know what round did they apply under. So I had to join to the application round. I had to know the student's address. And in order to do that, I first had to join from the application record to the person record to get to their rank 1 address. And so I've added those 3 joins all as base level joins here. I then added a filter on application round to select only applications of the 2024 undergrad app. And then I added another filter on US State for Pennsylvania. And finally, the request wanted to know by county. So in addition to exporting a unique ID for the student and their name, I added the rank 1 county, which fortunately Slate has out of the box for us and makes it very, very easy to pull that information. And so you can see the difference here between doing the first one as a base level join, where I just wanted the state based on the rank 1 address. And then another example where I don't care about whether it's their highest priority. I just care that at one point they lived or were connected to Pennsylvania in some geographical way. So I'm just going to all of the person's addresses and looking to see that at least one of them is in Pennsylvania. The next slide, I call it subquery join hard mode because sometimes you need to add a join that typically would be a one-to-many relationship, but you're going to need to force it to be a one-to-one relationship. Most of these common scenarios Slate has thought of for you. So rank 1 high school, rank 1 address, rank 1 device like email address or phone number are all very common situations where students have a priority record, but they could have multiple records of that type. But in this case, we want to look at the most recent counselor review form in the application. So they could, have multiple reviews as their application's been read. I only care about the most recent one. So in this case, I clicked the one-to-many icon next to the join button. I added a sort on here after joining to the counselor review form in question. And I changed that sort to descending order. So they could have 1, they could have 1,000 review forms. And I'll only ever be joining to the most recent one here. And that allowed me to pull in the name of the person who submitted that. And then we thought it'd be fun to walk through a couple examples of a bad query. And so I want to give full credit to Katie for helping out with this one. But we took that question we had, how many 2024 undergraduate applications did we have by county in Pennsylvania? And we decided to try to rate this in the worst way that we could think of. And so unlike our great example we just walked through, you can see here that we are first doing we have 2 parentheticals with an or statement, and we're looking for an address in PA exists. So within that filter, we're joining to addresses and filtering on Pennsylvania and saying you're in this list,
Mhm.
or you don't have an address, which we're assuming we haven't actually about to.
Like from person to address back to person and everyone's favorite kind of looping joint.
Yes. And that's what you can see down there in the addresses. We've got kind of this weird backwards loop of joins going on. And then we also are joining to pings, which is Slate's web analytics feature. Not quite sure where that came from, but in this case, we do not need to know what websites or what Slate pages a student visited in our instance. And so that's just a purely redundant join. So if you don't need it to answer the question you started with, you don't need to join to it, or you're going to risk complicating your data. And Katie, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe this query just would not run despite our best efforts.
Absolutely true. You can see by the matching rows ... that this query is simply like absolutely not. When it doesn't return the row estimator, that's when you know something's gone awry.
Awesome. Get good advance 2 slides here as well. We can just kind of walk through that a little bit more. So again, the big thing here is think about the data that you need to pull in your queries and only only export what is relevant and also safe. You might get a lot of requests from people where they say, I want a student ID and their email and their phone number and their social security number. And that's a lot of information to export. And it's important to really help them understand what do they need for their business process. And, when possible, only give them what they need. If they're just looking to get a list of students and they want to do a quick pivot table and count how many undergraduate apps by county, you really don't need to give them their name. You don't need to give them their email address. You really just need to give them that unique ID so that they can do their sort as well. And so we'll cover it a little bit later, but we mentioned it before. Generally, those base joins should be reserved for one-to-one relationships and not one-to-many, or you're going to end up with that matching row issue we had where your query is just going to churn and churn and churn. And if that query were in something like a rule or a mailing, it could potentially impact performance in your instance and affect your other users. Next slide, please, Katie. You can skip through these ones as well. I kind of talked through most of this work going on.
I'm so sorry. This is incredible. I forgot I did this. I have a not exists and then a not, and I think I selected every single country. This is just a work of art unto itself.
This is beautiful.
Thank you.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
Awesome. But I do want to shift us to a few resources you can go to now, because we've shown you kind of what bad queries look like, and we've shown you what it looks like to write a good query. I like to start with, this is meant to show you all of the potential. It's meant to show you the journey you're going to go through as you're creating queries. You should not be sitting there thinking you're going to be a query expert just after this session. They really are that fundamental building block. And the more you can embrace those best practices early, and the idea of starting small and slowly working your way up will only make you a better query writer. So when you get lost, I wrote if on the bullet, but the reality is when you get lost on where to join, it's important to take a step back and think about the layout of a person record or an organization record if you're querying on, say high schools. And think about all of the things that you see when you're looking at that record screen. So for the using the example of addresses, if you would navigate to their profile tab and go to their contact/address, you'll see that they might have more than one address is listed there. And that's a clue that, oh, that's a one-to-many relationship. I'm looking at one person and I'm looking at all of their addresses. It's the same as in joins, joining from person and joining to address by rank and selecting the priority, or a subquery join and joining from person to addresses. So on the next slide, you can kind of see that on the record. If you've never looked at a Slate record, this is where a student can have multiple devices. That's that top table with the email and the mobile number. In this case, the student has 2. And then in the case of their address, it looks like they have 2 as well, showing you that those devices under contact are a one-to-many relationship, and those addresses are also a one-to-many relationship. Now, Slate is a really, really dynamic tool, and there's a lot of data stored in the CRM, and it's all interconnected. And so as you're getting started, you're not going to know what all of the joins mean. You're not going to know what all of the bases are, and you're going to, inevitably select incorrect ones from time to time. But Slate comes out of the box with a resource called the Query Join, the Configurable Joins Base Explorer, where you can actually kind of create a simulated query. You can pick any of the bases, you could pick in a query. And once you select one, it'll pull up this nifty diagram. And it'll show you all of the different joins that you could connect to. So in this case, from person, I could get to application. I could also join from person to material or activity or course or field or interest or device, and so on. And from there, I might unlock more joins. And so as you're trying to get comfortable with how the data is laid out and stored in Slate, it's sometimes helpful to have this visual representation, so that you can start to kind of piece together this web of data and bases as they're connected. If you click on one of those blue boxes, it'll pull up this pop-up, and it'll show you that in this case, the join name application by rank joins to application. So does application by rank submitted. And there's nothing under join type, showing you that that's a one-to-one relationship. However, the join name applications joins an application, and the join type is multiple, because there could be multiple records connected there as well. And so I'll leave you with one final slide before I pass it back to Katie. With great power comes great responsibility. Query building is really one of those fundamental building blocks. And as such, once you get good at writing queries, you'll learn that everyone in your office wants to be your best friend. So having that critical eye for what do they need versus what do they want is really, really going to be helpful in terms of helping kind of triage what kind of data you should share and with whom. A great query can always get bad results. So remember, always be critical of your own data. Ask yourself, does this result make sense? Should we have this many students in this county? So that you can try to catch if you made a mistake along the way. And of course, test and test. As you level up, you'll begin manipulating data in bulk. And when you get to that level, if you wrote a bad query and then you do something on all of those potentially thousands of records, it could be a really big problem to fix down the road. So go slow and think about, how are these students or how are your colleagues going to be affected if you make this change? If someone were to take this data and run with it, because it's always better to just wait and rebuild a query the right way rather than having to play catch up later on. But I will pass it to Katie to talk about some great use cases you can do with things like queries and visualizing data across records in Slate.
You mean dashboards? Woohoo! Okay. So dashboard is one of those words that Technolutions uses, let's say, like once or twice throughout Slate, right? Um, but what I'm going to be talking about very specifically is customizing your user dashboard and all of the options that we see on the right hand, the very far right navigation all throughout the entire instance. So these are tips and tricks that I use for myself. I do want to put a little caveat on that you do need to have permission to get into database if you want to update your own. So this might be a little bit more on the advanced side of what we're showing today, but extremely valuable. So this is my home instance. Welcome to my sandbox. Um, I like to have a little compliment to myself. So we can see that I look great today. We can also see my link to the Parish Group website. That is the link to my active calendar. And then I also have my Zoom room link. So these are things that I need all of the time, all of the places. And I love that by toggling the star on and off, no matter where I am in my instance, I can grab it. So I built this by going to Database, and then Dashboards, and then New Dashboards. And this just has the name of Katie's links. Our type is user, and there's only one option for base, and that is also user. And then I did a direct filter to myself. That's all. You can be fancy here. I did not opt for being fancy. I will give you also the fun fact in case you didn't know that this is called a WYSIWYG editor, and it stands for what you see is what you get. So there's just a little fancy tip for you. I do have some coding that has like a little countdown to Summit, but overwhelmingly it's just links that I use a lot of the time. So Dave shared incredible tips about how to manage healthy queries. Oh, you already did, so remember to change that. But I do want to talk about the Slate Scholar Classroom, which is the light bulb on your dashboard. So right here, I am on the queries page in Slate. It knows that I am on the queries page in Slate, and it offers me immediately relevant knowledge base articles. As we navigate around the Slate instance, it does change. So we can see that I moved to forms, and then on the right, we can see that I moved to the deliver tool. I love this because I think it cuts down a lot on like, oh my gosh, I don't know, which I feel like we've all said 10 times. Because you no longer need to just start searching the knowledge base. But you also have the option to completely customize this. You can build lessons. So if you are on a specific place in Slate, you can outline your step-by-step processes. They can be different for different pages. And if you go back to the screenshot that we were looking at and we see the help tag of manage/form, you can use that to set instructions to show only for specific pages. So that is going to be database and Slate Scholar custom content. And then the help tag is simply where you place the manage/form, and then you place your instructions there. This updates in real time. It is fantastic if you are always like pulling up the same like Word document, Google Drive instructions on the side while you're doing something. But something I do want to make sure to say is this does show for all users. And then I just wanted to end with some resources for learning. All of these are free, with the exception of the Learning Lab at the bottom of the asterisk on it. But the community forums are fantastic for asking questions. There are the whole user group of the PA Slate users. They actually meet in person once a year, do a mini summit. It is incredible. Technolutions does host webinars as well as regular recordings of these. And if you have the institutional support, I believe Learning Lab is the introductory course for $250, Dave?
If I'm right.
There are also some unofficial things. You can go through Facebook to the Super Slate Friends, to the Slack community, and then there is, of course, the knowledge base. I would be remiss to not mention that preferred partners are here if you need anything. And then Dave mentioned a link to the query overviews, which we're including here as well. Questions, thoughts, feelings, concerns? Here we are.